everywhere I look, everybody out there still seems to be looking for more volume, more oven spring, bigger bread, bigger bread. Well, I'm going to give you some tips right here, right now, that's going to help you achieve those results. So without wasting any more time, let's get at it. Number one, the key to good oven spring, full gluten development. Don't undermix your dough. Undermixed doughs yield low volume. Window pane test. Develop out your dough. Never mind mix times that people are giving you. Always good practice to develop out that dough to start to get a nice window pane forming in your dough. That's how you tell if you have good gluten development. If after a certain period of time you followed the mix time guidelines that I've given you in a previous video and you still don't find that your dough is as elastic as you want, don't worry too much. You've mixed it a good amount, and now you're going to give it some rest time, which relaxes the gluten, and the conditioning, the natural conditioning begins. And depending on how much rest time that you give, the softer and more relaxed your dough will be. And ultimately, when you pull it out and stretch it, after this time, you should notice a marked improvement in the development and elasticity of your gluten. Now, for those of you who have watched any of my videos, you understand the importance of conditioning. Now, I'm not going to get into that too much, but I want to talk a little bit about ascorbic acid. Ascorbic acid, or vitamin C, is inexpensive. You can purchase it online. You use very little of it in your dough system. It will have dramatic effects on the overall performance of your product. Ascorbic acid is generally deemed a reducing agent, and therefore it has an effect on the gluten protein within the flour. It softens it, it makes it more elastic, and it helps it provide better gas retention capabilities. So ascorbic acid has been used by bakers and still is used by bakers around the world as a little bit of a hack to cover up any issues or shortfalls in the flour quality from time to time and season to season. Now, if you don't want to use ascorbic acid, you can use orange juice. Now, oranges have different levels of ascorbic acid in them, so it's always good to kind of just do a quick check. But, you don't think too much. You're getting a bit of ascorbic acid inside the orange juice that you use. You use this at around 1.5% in your dough system. So you get the benefits of ascorbic acid, and you also get the benefits of citric acid in your dough. And as we all know, acid plays an important role in the softening of the gluten protein, and also is a yeast digs it. Okay, so the acid's in there for the yeast, and you're getting this natural conditioning from the acid in the orange juice. Another hack used by bakeries around the world to combat fluctuations in flour quality from season to season and batch to batch is vital wheat gluten. Now, vital wheat gluten can be purchased online also. I think it's an important one to have in the kitchen. Obviously, if you had really good flour and you know you're mixing out your doughs properly, but you're still struggling with volume, then maybe your flour needs a little bit of a boost. And vital wheat gluten is that boost. A friend of mine was baking this bread. He was using a bleached all-purpose bread flour from here in Asia, not that great a quality, and this is what he was producing before. In order to get some volume, I told him to add some vital wheat gluten. We purchased some, and he went to this. Now, this is the exact same formula, exact same water content. Everything was exactly the same, except we added vital wheat gluten in there. Now, he stacked it to 5%. He went right up. I don't recommend that you go that high. I always am a believer in starting with smaller quantities, taking a look at the effects that it has on your finished product, and then you don't need to go crazy with it. However, if you've got a really, really poor flour, or it's just you're really struggling with getting that oven spring and that good gas retention, then don't think too much. Stack between 1 and 5% directly on top of your formula. However, keep in mind that the more vital wheat gluten you add into your dough, the more may require some additional water. The next thing I wanted to talk about, which is number 4, to get optimum oven spring, is oven temperatures. Now, you have many websites and many video channels out there talking about how to bake sourdough, as an example, in your Dutch oven. Turn up your oven, get it 500 degrees, and then you got to get it in there with the steam and then this and that. Let me tell you something. Hot ovens is not how you get oven spring. It's exactly the opposite. Every baker who's a trained baker will tell you this. Nobody creates a really super hot oven to get oven spring. Okay? The idea is to have a cooler oven. The first third of the baking time, approximately, you'd like to have a little bit lower of a temperature. Now, it makes sense if you think about it, okay? The slower that your crust starts to form on your bread, the more easily it's able to expand and rise. Going with these crazy temperatures, I've heard of 480 degrees to bake your sourdough for the first 20 minutes or whatever, and then take the lid off and do all this stuff. Oh my God. What I would definitely recommend that people do is take a look at my video on bake times. You will get some really good insight. Now, I don't bake, and I don't know too many people in the real baking world that bake at 480 degrees. Now, you got to keep in mind that when you're putting your product into a Dutch oven, in theory, the Dutch oven should be cooler than the oven temperature, unless you've been preheating your Dutch oven. But if you really want to create something cool and better, the better concept is to put the dough into your Dutch oven cool. Now, what that's going to do is that's going to give you a little bit of time at the very beginning for your Dutch oven to heat up. Ultimately, create that cooler environment where you will optimize your oven spring by not caramelizing and creating a crust over the top of the bread. So, going with a really hot Dutch oven inside a hot oven to begin with, not the correct way to do it. People like the Food Geek have just realized this out, and where his recommendations before were preheat your oven to 500 degrees because he read it somewhere online, and all the rest of these guys are kind of following what everybody else is talking about. Well, he went to a baking symposium or something in Denmark, ended up realizing that's not how it rolls. And so now he's done a 360, and now he's telling you to do the opposite, which is actually preheat your oven, throw your bread into your Dutch oven, and then turn everything off for 20 minutes, and then finish baking it off. Go and take a look at my video on bake times and temperatures. We start off a little bit lower. We don't bake for as hot of a temperature as they're recommending. We're in the reality level of bake times and temperatures. So please check it out. It will sort this out for you, and you will get much oven spring, 100% guaranteed. Number 5, consider buying a small package of a dough conditioner. You could buy it in your grocery shelf. There's many different types of companies that provide this stuff. I've just used Puretos as an example, very well known. A lot of these stuff that they put in there is natural. Now, you can go and struggle with making bread, and one day it works out good, one day it doesn't work out good. This is the reason why the big boys in the baking industry use dough conditioners. It sorts a lot of this stuff out for you. Don't be afraid of it. If you want to struggle in your kitchen just with flour, water, salt, and sugar, whatever else you got in there, and wonder why you're having all this inconsistency, etc., etc., think about utilizing some type of a dough conditioner. They're not very expensive, they're available online, and will give you a host of benefits that I've mentioned here. So there you have the first 5 tips that I've given you, but I've got a number 6. And number 6 is really about the things just in general process that you have to always keep in mind. Number 1 is remember to properly sheet out and degas your dough after every single rest step. Do not use time. Don't think about time for determining your punch back. So you're resting your dough, you let it rise for a certain period, punch it back. Time does not come into the factor. The golden rule of thumb is double in size. Make sure that your final shaping is reasonably tight. You don't want to have a really loose, floppy kind of a dough that the seams aren't put together properly. You want to make sure that you have some tension built into it and that you don't have any loose openings or whatever where gas can escape and you can ultimately lose oven spring and volume from that. And lastly, do not overproof. I mean, it's easy to overproof. I highly recommend that you check out my recommendations on dough weight to pan size. Very important. You don't want to be pushing too little dough in too big of a pan, and ultimately you don't have enough dough in there to really give you the type of oven spring that you want. So it's important to proof to the right amount of time. Generally 60 minutes is a nice final proof time, but double in size, once again, the golden rule. Thank you very much for watching the video. I'm going to be releasing a lot of these little short videos, so hit that subscribe button, keep on top of everything that's coming out, and please drop me a line and let me know what you think of everything in the comment section. So anyway, thank you. See you next time on No BS Baking.